Yeah, Jeremy Clarkson is in the news for supposedly being racist.
He's catching a lot of heat about it.
Yeah. He's tried to set the record straight, but everyone's calling him a racist.
Yeah.
But is he racist?
Have you seen the clip?
I haven't seen that.
I
I haven't seen that clip. I saw the program when it was aired, so I know the kind of context of what he was talking about.
Okay, so my understanding is the context is he was choosing between two cars. He did the eeny, meeny, miny, mo rhyme, which actually contains a racial pejorative in it. And when it came to the N word, he mumbled it. I've seen the clip, and I personally don't think what I saw Jeremy Clarkson do in the context it was done as a big racial problem, personally. That's me as a black guy saying it. Because it was a mumble. What you heard was a mumble. He says it inaudibly. He murmurs it. We know what he's trying to cover up, and he didn't do it well enough, but I think you can blast him for using that rhyme in the first place. When I was growing up, it did. When I was growing up, it was Mickey Mouse in his house. And the other thing that we've got to remember as well is that this is an old nursery rhyme. People of Jeremy Clarkson's generation probably grew up listening to this rhyme. Now, are we saying that that makes it right? No. It's what did I just say there? Oh, he could have said the N-word. Maybe. The only reason we know he mumbled that is because we know the rhyme. There are plenty of men out there who probably muttered stuff like that under their breath and you wouldn't be sure what he said. It would have been much worse if they had thought, okay, that's fine, let's keep that in. Blast him for using an inappropriate word in an inappropriate rhyme. I feel that for what the context, the fact that he said it in a rhyme, we wasn't talking to anyone in particular. I think for the fact that we have to keep in mind that this is an old school nursery rhyme and that's how the rhyme goes. I think for the fact that it was an outtake and it wasn't aired, it wasn't supposed to see the light of day anyway. Does that make it right? No. But can you call him a racist? No. We as a nation need to be just very consistent in how we treat or react to people speaking racial slurs.
You can't be saying one thing for one person, basically. You're saying something else.
Look at John Terry in 2011 when he supposedly called, what's his name, effing black so-and-so. That was a racial slur. Mm-hmm. Think about it. You can see in the footage, the context. Yeah, you know, you've
said it was very aggressive, the way that he said it, and he meant it in a hurtful way.
It looked like it. What really happened to John Terry? He might have lost his captaincy for a time, but did he lose his job as a footballer? If John Terry lost not only his captaincy, but was thrown out of footballing and wasn't ever allowed to touch football ever again, sure, do whatever you feel like to Jeremy Clarkson, but that's not what's going on here. You've got a man who has mumbled something that may or may not be a racial pejorative. We assume it is because we know the rhyme, who's gone on record as apologising, etc., etc. And then you've got someone like John Terry who said, "You effing black so-and-so." He said it. We see him say it. It's been confirmed that he said it by expert lip readers and all the rest of it. Did he lose his job? Were people really that fussed? People had an opinion, yes, but did they gun for John Terry the way that they're gunning for Jeremy Clarkson? I don't think so. I don't think it's the same thing at all. Why is that? Why aren't we being consistent as a community, as a nation? Why aren't we being consistent with how we are judging these things?
Was the John Terry case, did the police get involved?
He got interviewed under police caution and stuff like this.
So, okay, but he used a racial
slur.
Sorry, he supposedly...
No, he used a racial slur. He got acquitted of whatever he was charged with, but he used a racial slur. The man admitted to saying, yes, I said effing blah, 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 blah.
But, okay, so he did that, and so the police got involved. And Clarkson, should the police be involved with that?
Leave it alone. No, what for? At any workplace in the UK, if an employee used a racial slur, forget it to another employee, if he just used a racial slur, would the police get involved? No. You would say to yourself, let the employer handle it, wouldn't you?
Of course.
The BBC has handled it. I'm not saying he's guiltless. I'm simply saying, is he a racist? I'll tell you who's a racist. Donald Sterling is a racist. The current owner of the LA Clippers. All that big fallout. He's got very unpleasant views about coloured people. And the other thing as well is we can get into the whole big thing about black people use the word all the time. Mm-hmm. This is where we as black people fall down. Oh, well, Jeremy Clarkson used this racial word. Oh my God, it's such an outrage. How many people have heard other black people use that word? I don't use the word. It's not a good word. So every time that I say something that might be inappropriate or misguided, or you do, would you want someone to hold you to account to the point where you lose your job? Is it worth that? I would want the question to be asked in this case. Do people want to blast Jeremy Clarkson because they really think he's a racist, or because they know for a fact that he's an arsehole? Andrew May, these guys say the guy's an arsehole. Fine. But again, let's go back to John Terry. Did he lose his job? You want to put all these people who work on this show that so many people love out of work because of this one incident.
He has been pulled up recently again, before this, for using what I didn't know was a racial slur.
What, you're talking about the slope incident?
Yeah.
I didn't. Well, it's obviously an old school thing. I didn't know.
No, I didn't know that either. You see, so it's done. But then there have been other ones where it's been insensitive. It was an eastern country. We're talking Asia, China, and over there. And he said something. I think the phrase was, "Hello, you industrious little fellows." But okay, someone took offence and he got in hot water for it.
Jeremy Clarkson's an asshole.
Of course he is.
Jeremy Clarkson is an absolute dick.
That's it. He's not saying he's not.
This is exactly.
Well, is the reaction to it?
It's knee jerk. The reaction to it is knee jerk. It's a reflex. Oh my god, he said the N-word. Outrage. What's going on here is people want to drag Jeremy Clarkson through the mud because of the fact that they know he's a dick, not because they really believe he's a racist. The guy's a dick, but crucify him for the right reasons.
Did you watch the kind of apology clip that he put up?
No, I read about him. He's apologised for this clip, but and I think people should let it go.
What the BBC have said, according to Jeremy Clarkson, if they get a complaint about him,
the game's over for him,
and that's it. He's stated whether that's on TV or off TV.
Unfortunately for Jeremy Clarkson, this is not the first time that he's wound people up. And because of that, this is why he's catching as much heat as he is. When Andrew May said, "Work sets you free."
Cats over the gates of Auschwitz.
Yes, exactly.
Work sets you free.
He caught a lot of heat for that, but they didn't do much there because of the context and the fact that Andrew doesn't go out of his way to piss people off. However, Jeremy Clarkson, as I said, is unapologetic. He doesn't give a monkeys, which is refreshing up to a point, but I think people have had enough of him. And the thing is as well, I'm not being funny, the BBC haven't exactly been shown in a very good light over the last 2-3 years, and of course they have to be seen to be acting on this. But do they really feel it's that much of a big deal? Well, I'll tell you what, I don't.
And like you said, with the apology video, and he comes on and he says, "I don't make a point of apologising."
Never does it.
But he states, "Look, I don't like the word. Don't use the word."
No, I'm sure he does.
But he says in the video, "I use the F word and I use the C word a lot." If he said, "You effing C," out in the street to someone as a joke, and somebody says, "Oh, I'm slightly offended by what I've heard," this is the problem with
political correctness.
Yeah. Now, what offends me may not offend you, but what you do may offend me. So does that mean that we all have to be these kind of like grey shapeless blobs so that you don't get offended and I don't get offended, to the point where basically we do nothing?
We have to keep in mind the context. The BBC doesn't give a monkeys if Jeremy Clarkson offends. Jeremy Clarkson has a lot of views that offend a lot of people. Having said that, the BBC must be seen to take a very strong stance when it comes to offending groups of people, not people in general. What you're offended with and what I'm offended by don't mean shit. Doesn't mean a thing. We're individuals. If on the other hand you can say, right, we've just alienated 1.2 million people because of what one man may or may not have said, it becomes a different ballgame.
Those 1.2 million people, whoever, will then turn away from a product that is trying to be sold to them.
Well, yeah.
Therefore, losing that corporation.
This is it. This is not. This is the BBC. Haven't taken the stance they've taken because they care about the fact that he actually said the N-word, or they care about racial sensitivity, or they care about the unity of different races within the country. This is about, we have to be seen to be dealing with this, because if we don't, we're going to alienate more people. So what did they have to do? Well, okay, Top Gear, shut it down.
It's not.
Don't want to do that.
That's it. Then that's the franchise.
Don't want to do that. Exactly. And hundreds of people lose their jobs, all because of one man. Does that seem fair? In my view, no. Okay. What's the other thing? Fire Clarkson. Get someone else on.
Who's going to watch? Who's going to watch the show?
Exactly. So the other thing is, right, let's give him an ultimatum. Let's make it look like we're doing something. I'll tell you what. Let's say that we've reprimanded Mr. Clarkson. If there are any more outbursts or anything that's going to cause problems or alienate people, we get him out. That'll make sure he keeps his nose clean enough to keep the gravy train rolling for a little bit longer.
Do
they really care whether or not the man's a racist? Do they care what he really said? I don't think so. It's about pressure, and because of this this scandal, they have now been put under pressure to act because of the amount of reaction. The BBC have said we've dealt with it. If there's any more nonsense, he's gone. In the meantime, he keeps his job. The people at Top Gear keeps their job. Leave it there. This thing about him calling that using the word slope in the presence of this Asian person, I didn't know that was a racial pejorative until I read about it. That's the good thing about being in a certain generation, that you don't pick up these sort of things. So, but you see, with that, there wasn't really a lot of pickup on that because no one really knows what the hell the man was talking about.
Do you think that the person who complained about it in the first place, do you think that they were
out to get him?
Well, it's one thing, but do you think they were black, or do you think they were white? Because
people don't feel the way they feel because this is just any man, or even that this is Top Gear, or even this is the BBC. It's because it's Jeremy Clarkson. People don't like Jeremy Clarkson, and this is the latest in many incidences of when he's pissed people off. But because it's racial, it's a hot button. And as I say, context.
I'm sure we'll see something in the next series of Top Gear where he mocks himself in that situation.
I personally, I wouldn't even risk that. I wouldn't. You can see, because people still feel so strongly about it. I wouldn't try and make a joke out of it, because this is not a joke. How it's made people feel is not a joke. So this wound is far too raw to be making light of it. I wouldn't poke the bear, because I wouldn't try it, because people feel too strongly about it. He almost lost his job. This is nothing to make fun about. Yeah, this is not funny. Some people would see it. He's seeing it as a joke. Some people would see it as outright mockery. Ha ha ha! I've got away with it. I wouldn't even risk it. Leave it alone. Is what I'd say. Don't forget that these people, particularly on top of these presenters, they're in a privileged position. They're reaching the ears of many, many millions of people. They're getting to do a lot of fun stuff and getting paid very, very well for it. He's in a privileged position, and he needs to act right now, act very humble. Even if he doesn't feel it, he needs to behave humbly, because presenters can't be seen, even if they do have views like this, they can't be seen to be having views like this, or behaving in any way that's going to alienate the viewership, or their employee, or put their employers in a position where they've got to act against, in the interest of what the viewership want. He's very lucky to have kept his job, particularly out of all the other shite he's been saying over the years. So, leave it alone, carry on, you've apologised, don't bring it up again, act exceedingly humble to your bosses. I suggest you send all the people who are working on Top Gear some sort of muffin basket or something.
Yeah, but make sure there's enough black and white ones.
Yeah, right. And just lay low for a long time. Anything you're saying, think twice on it and do the thing. Leave Jeremy Clarkson alone. Be honest about the man. He's an asshole. He's an old school douchebag. He's fat. He's ugly, and he smokes. He's got bad teeth, and he looks awful for a man his age. But is he a racist? No, I don't think so.